signal to go ahead and start the match.
These are our final undefeateds as well.
Yeah, these are the last two undefeateds in the tournament. Jun versus Blue White Red Flash, and Reid Duke is on the play, and it looks like we have a turn 1 Overgrown Tomb.
Steam Vents for Costa.
Let's see if Reid Duke has his signature card in Farseek, and it looks like he does. There we go. Turn 2 Farseek from Jund on the play.
Getting out in front in terms of mana is really important for a variety of reasons. The Blue White Red Flash deck ideally gets a little bit ahead on the board and then keeps opponent off balance with a mixture of counter spells and removal spells. So getting out in front shuts down that angle of attack. Additionally, Costa has Syncopate in his deck, so the more mana you have, the more and more that you invalidate that card.
And I'm excited for this match because not only are these two good players and playing decks that they're sort of known for playing, they're also actually pretty good friends, so they know each other very well. They know each other's tendencies and their play styles, so definitely expect to see a little gamesmanship maybe perhaps in this match as well. So
see if Reid's able to capitalize on his mana advantage from the Farseek here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Reid's deck is that he doesn't have that many 4-drops. Obviously, Huntmaster Fell is one of them, or Olivia as well. But Matt does have a Syncopate, so if he just runs one of them out there without a Cavern of Souls, it can actually just get soaked up by that Syncopate, which it looks like Matt is determining whether or not he wants to do it. He might have a Searing Spear. He might be more afraid of a Rakdos Return. Maybe he wants to save that Syncopate for a potential back-breaking spell like Rakdos Return or Thragtusk. But it looks like, yeah, he is going to use the Syncopate on the Olivia. And Matt did have a Think Twice in his hand as well, so maybe he was thinking, Olivia is not that much of a threat right now for me. I do have a Supreme Verdict. Maybe I just want to keep drawing cards and develop my mana base and deal with the Olivia later on.
Yeah.
Obviously, Thragtusk is really a card that he doesn't want to deal with, but here comes the Cavern of Souls naming Beast. Likely naming Beast. We'll confirm that, but Thragtusk does resolve now, and Matt Costa just has a Think Twice to cast.
Yeah. Before, Thragtusk was pretty nightmarish for Blue-White Red decks. It's still quite good, but Turn Burn gives the archetype access to a nice clean answer.
Yeah, and Matt does have access to Turn Burn in his deck, but he doesn't have 4 copies, so he's still gonna have to find a way to deal with that Thragtusk right now. He doesn't have anything going on. It looks like we have a Ground Seal from Reid, which is pretty good because, again, obviously Matt relies on those Snapcaster Mages in his deck. So that will turn off that side of Matt's deck, and Thragtusk comes over and drops Matt down to 15. And here we see yet another play from Reid in a Vampire Nighthawk.
I believe Matt does have his one main deck Supreme Verdict in hand currently, so we'll see if this board is enough to induce that.
Yeah, so we're going to see a flashback Think Twice here. See if Matt gives Matt a little more to work with. He draws another land, a Glacial Fortress. And let's see, so he has a Hollow Fountain for his draw. So 2 lands off the 2 draws right there. He does have a Supreme Verdict, which will leave Reid with just a Beast on his side of the board. But let's see if I'm not sure if he just needs to pull the trigger just yet. He could decide to just play a land and cast Think Twice and flashback, but he decides to actually just go for it now. Cast a Supreme Verdict, leaves Reid with the Beast token, and then probably just play a Hollow Fountain for the turn. He does have a Restoration Angel in his hand, which is a pretty good blocker against those beasts. So his next turn could be Restoration Angel, Think Twice, which isn't that bad, but let's see if Reid has another follow-up here.
And even if that isn't the most dominating Supreme Verdict of all time, Costa just needs to give himself the breathing space to be able to resolve his card drawing spells and get out in front in that way.
And thankfully, even though Matt did draw another land this turn, Reid did brick on putting another play onto the board. So this Restoration Angel could actually block and kill this beast if Reid doesn't have a Putrefy. Putrefy is one of the few answers he does have, and he does have the Putrefy. So the beast will come over, dropping Matt now to 9. Reid has another land, and here we see a Think Twice.
Finds another Think Twice.
And there's a Snapcaster. So Snapcaster can come down and block the beast. Unfortunately, it can't actually target any of the cards in the graveyard because of Ground Seal. So it's effectively just a 2/1 flash creature.
Yeah. You still got to be feeling okay-ish if you're Costa right now. You have a lot of big draws after the Think Twice, and you're not under a ton of pressure. Although Reid appears to be mulling over a big bonfire.
There's a bonfire, so we're going to see a Think Twice here. see if Matt draws an answer to that and just draws yet another land here. Yeah, it looks like he might have to take 6 here, dropping to 3, and it looks like that Snapcaster will end up coming down just to chump block for the turn.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Matt faces a lethal attack here.
Which is damaging, not only, of course, taking a bunch of damage there, but now not being able to flashback. Think twice this turn, and, you know, Costa's really struggling, digging for answers. Reid is mulling over whether or not he wants to attack into the threat of a Restoration Angel, which would be devastating for him right here.
Yeah, and he just goes for it. I like this play. You wanna just go for it. You already saw one Restoration Angel. There's a good chance he doesn't have a second in his hand based on the way the turn's kind of played out. And if you can just kill your opponent, I think you have to go for it.
Costa flooding out really badly here. It looks like his hand is pillar and some land, so this Think Twice is going to have to find something big to be able to handle that beast. He does find a Azorius Charm.
So, not a bad draw there. He finds at least an answer to the Thragtusk, the Beast token, so he can actually cast the Azorius Charm and still flash back the second Think Twice in his graveyard. And it looks like we're going to see an Azorius Charm and the Beast. Does Reid have another creature that he can commit to the board? It looks like yet another land, and here's a Rakdos Return. Oh, no, it's a Bonfire for 3, and Matt doesn't have a counterspell, so we're going to move on to game 2.
Yeah, and you saw, you know, with Matt under pressure the whole time, he wasn't really able to do the blue-white-red flash thing of getting out in front a little bit. Kind of playing something approaching a Delver game plan of getting a little bit ahead on the board and then using counter spells and removal spells, possibly bounce spells to keep their opponent off balance. But Reid got out in front with an early Farseek, and then a Thragtusk that couldn't be fought over because of Cavern of Souls, and that he was able to leverage that edge and never really let his foot up.
And in general, I think Jund is a little advantaged against blue or right flash. Obviously, the flash deck does have cards like Sphinx of Revelation, which are very powerful against Jund in the mid-late game. Jund doesn't even play any of the slaughter games that they used to combat those types of decks. But they do have cards like Cavern of Souls and Rurik Thur, which kind of can come down and put a lot of pressure on the flash deck. So I think in general, Jund is probably a little favored here, but Costa obviously knows his deck very well, and he does have cards like Turn and Burn, which can answer those problemsome creatures that Flash had difficulty dealing with in the past. So looking at Reid's deck list here, what do you kind of see him bringing in after board here?
Well, he has 2 copies of Duress that seem excellent here. He has 2 copies of Rurik Thar, which you alluded to earlier. They're good not only against the spells, but the blue-white-red deck obviously flush with spells. But additionally, Matt's going to be trying to attack in the air with a mixture of Restoration Angel and Thundermaw Hellkite. So actually a large reach creature is quite valuable there. He has 2 copies of Ground Seal that he can bring in as well. I'm not sure if he cares that much about the graveyard stuff, but he has more tools there if he wants to. And the rest of the sideboard is pretty medium. He can bring in Liliana the Veil if he's worried about the threat of Geistesane Draft. That's not a card, I believe, that appears in Matt's 75.
Yeah.
And if Reid is equipped with that information, then I would be surprised to see him bring in Liliana, as it's pretty marginal otherwise. And those are really, in my opinion, the tools that Reid's working with here.
Yeah, and out of Matt's deck, he's got 3 copies of Thundermaw Hellkite, which I think he wants to bring in because against a deck like Jund, even though they have a lot of removal, I still think you want ways to close out the game quickly, and Thundermaw is just a very effective threat. Costa probably has him in the sideboard as a way to hedge against maybe more aggressive decks that he expected to see in the field. But I do think Thundermaw is a pretty solid threat against Reid's deck. I also like the 3 copies of Renounce that goes in his sideboard. It's a way to deal with a Huntmaster Fells, which is a pretty solid card that you have to contend with. It's also a way to deal with Rurik Thar or any Olivia. So there's a lot of problems, some gold creature cards that he could potentially deal with. He has 3 copies of the spell, which probably don't come in this matchup, even though Reid has instant speed spells like Putrefy. It's still not worth it, generally only for control decks. 2 copies of Static Caster, which really do nothing against Reid's deck. He's got 1 clone, which is definitely coming in. It's a way to deal with Olivia through the Legend rule, and also copying a Thragtusk is actually pretty good too. And it works really well through Restoration Angel. He's got 1 extra copy of Supreme Verdict, which he can bring in. I don't think he really needs, he might bring in the Supreme Verdict, but I think if he's bringing in Thundermaw, he might leave Supreme in the side still. He's got another copy of Pillar Flame, which probably isn't coming in, and one Oblivion Ring, which I could see coming in to deal with some of those problematic Planeswalkers like Garrett Primal Hunter.
Yeah, you alluded to a lot of individually threatening cards that Reid has access to, so the more efficient one-for-one removal that Matt can bring in to answer those kind of cards, likely to be valuable.
So it looks like we have land for Matt Costa, Reid Duke. Let's see if he has the turn 2 Farseek here. Turn 2 Farseek on the draw. One of the ways Jund can sort of gain parity, but if he doesn't have a turn 2 Farseek here, he might be a little too. Matt's definitely got a sigh of relief right there.
Yeah.
Looks like Matt has a couple of Sphinx Revelation, War Leader's Helix. Looks like that Oblivion Ring that he boarded in is also there, but he doesn't have any He doesn't have any cheap card drawing like Think Twice, so he's going to be a little hard pressed to draw land here.
And there's Liliana the Veil, which is very powerful here against Costa, as Costa has no 4th land and nothing castable. 3 copies of Sphinx's Revelation, an Oblivion Ring, Restoration Angel, and a Helix. So +1ing Liliana here is a pretty powerful line. It forces Costa's hand to respond with an Oblivion Ring next turn, or possibly Helix if Costa is to draw a land, and Reid gets to strip one of the heavy hitters out of Costa's hand.
Yeah, so we're going to get a discard here. Both players play it face down first, and Matt discards the Sphinx Revelations. And there's an Augur of Bolas. Looks like he might have to Oblivion Ring that Liliana now, unless he wants to, just because of how many powerful spells he has in his hand. He could choose to just play the Augur Bolas here, but I think he wants to just Oblivion Ring that Liliana.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have that. Let's see if Reid kept in the Abrupt Decays, but it looks like he might have another Liliana.
And that's just devastating for Costa, who's, again, hand is full of expensive action.
So looks like Matt drew an Azorius Charm, which will allow him to cantrip, and he does draw an island, so now Augur Bolas can come down too as well. Let's see if he hits. He does get a Think Twice and a Turn and Burn, so he has a decision to make here. Kind of like taking the Turn Burn, just because, again, you really want ways to deal with the Thractus, but looks like he just wants to make sure he hits his land drop, so he takes the Think Twice instead, and passes for the turn. Reid does have a 5th land, and here comes Garrett Primal Hunter. Wow. Really devastating card against Matt. Matt has basically, he has the War Leader's Helix to deal with it now, but Reid will get a beast out of the exchange.
Yep.
So there we have a War Leader's Helix targeting Reid, and then redirected to the Garrett Primal Hunter. So I don't think Reid has any Garrett Primal Hunters left in his deck, so I think he discarded 1 to Liliana, so...
Yeah, he has 2 in his main deck and none in his sideboard, so...
So the Beast comes over, dropping Matt down to 17. Reid does have a Kessig Wolfrun, which, again, a very good card in this matchup. And here's a Rakdos Return for 4, targeting Matt Costa. I think that's going to potentially drop Costa down to just 1 card here. He does have a Think Twice that he can discard, which isn't that terrible. He also has a Restoration Angel, maybe a Restoration Angel. He wants to keep it just so he can blink his Augur Bolas, as well as block that Beast token. But he's going to have to pitch 2 of his Sphinx's Revelations, so let's see what he decides to keep here.
It's especially devastating because Costa is so far behind in terms of just raw card count that it's hard to imagine him catching up in this game without resolving a big revelation. So losing this many of them is, for his long-term prospects in this game, it's just devastating.
Yeah, he only has 3 in his deck, so he has no more to top deck. So he ended up discarding all of them. He wanted to keep the Restoration Angel. He's still going to get value out of Restoration Angel Augur Bolas, so it's not the worst situation. The problem is that Reid does have that Kessig Wolfrun, so even though the Restoration Angel can block the Beast, Reid can just activate his Wolfrun and deal with the Angel that way.
Yeah, and this is the problem that Blue-White-Red Flash has if it doesn't get out in front on the board in some capacity, is Jund just starts casting these devastating 5 and 6 mana spells. And unless you're doing something, unless you're really leveraging your early advantage either with cards or damage, one of those 2 things, it's really hard to overcome someone who's just resolving Thragtusks and Rakdos Returns and Garrix and what have you.
Yeah, and the problem on Matt's side of the board is you usually find yourself behind, and you want cards like Syncopate and Counterflux and Dissipate in order to deal with the powerful spells that Reid has. But at the same time, Reid does have cards like Cavernous Souls, which make your counter spells seem useless at times. So it's a really tough spot for Blue-White-Red Flash. So let's see what Reid decides to do here. It looks like he might cast a spell prior to combat. Maybe suspecting the Restoration Angel. And here we see a ground seal first. I think, you know, given the cards that Matt discarded, like double Sphinx's Revelation, I think it's possible Reid could put Matt on the Restoration Angel. I mean, you have to think about the situation. If your opponent only has 4 lands, what cards does he want to keep there?
Well, we're about to find out.
And I think it's double Restoration Angel, so the duress will miss. So now Reid actually just can't attack with the beast unless he has another land. So yeah, he does have another land, and he just decides to pass their turn. So here comes a Restoration Angel. And Putrefy on Augur Bolus, so wow, Matt's not going to get any value out of that Restoration Angel.
Yeah, and you can see Reid sort of trying to keep his plan the same after using Liliana, after resolving a big Rakdos returns. A lot of players' instinct would just be to putrefy the Restoration Angel, but Reid is trying to choke Matt on cards.
Yep.
And so that Augur is actually more threatening there.
Wow.
Rurik Thar also.
Rurik Thar comes down, 6/6 Vigilance, and most importantly, Reach. 6/6, and the other ability, obviously, whenever an opponent casts a spell, they have to whenever any player casts a spell, Rurik Thar deals 6 damage to that player. So very tough spot for Matt right here.
Rurik Thar matches up with Blue White Red Flash in a number of awesome ways. Obviously, spell dense, and so taking 6 every time you cast a spell shuts off all these cantrips and Snapcaster Mage shenanigans. And because the Blue White Red Flash deck basically has to win in the air, having a huge vigilance reach creature rather is incredible as well.
Yeah, and Matt decided not to flashback his Think Twice or cast his Azorius Charm and just get that Restoration Angel out there so he can pass the turn now. Now he can actually double block the Rurik Thar. Unfortunately, that Kessig Wolf Run is going to make any block pretty bad news for Matt. So Reid is comfortable sending both creatures in here. He does have that Azorius Charm, so he might be comfortable just taking 6 and putting the Rurik Thar back on top of the deck. Or maybe, because it's a tough spot here, you might have to just, how much are you taking here? It's going to be 4, 5, 6, you'd be taking 12, you'd be taking 4 trample here. So yeah, it looks like he's just going to take 6 instead and put the Rurik Thar back on top of Reid's deck. Reid has no cards in his hand, so if Reid can top deck a counterspell, he could actually potentially deal with that Rurik Thar.
Yeah, and he gets to hit for 6 here as well, which is also a huge deal.
And wow, he does actually draw a counterflux, so perfect draw for Matt. Reid has no cards in his hand. He can leave one of his, being at 8, he's got to make sure that he doesn't just die to the Kessig Wolf Run and the Beast. So just counting up the math right here, attacking with just 1 Restoration Angel, dropping Reid down to 13. Reid's likely still going to probably go for the Rurik Thar here, or maybe let's see if he wants to attack first. I think you still go for the Rurik Thar, just because there's too many cards that Matt can have to stop the Wolf Run. And there's the counterflux. So Reid doesn't have an effective attack this turn. He's going to have to pass the turn back.
So, but Costa's drawing very live. If he finds a way to answer this beast, he can actually just win.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he attacked for 6, I think he did draw either an Azorius Charm or a Warrior's Helix or Searing Spear potentially. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of outs. Looks like he's going to force him to do it.
Yeah. You either have something or you don't.
Yeah, you better have something, Matt. So he does have a Warrior's Helix. So Warrior's Helix targets the beast. Matt's going to go up to 12, and Reid Duke ends up just...
That was quite an impressive display by Matt that game.
Yeah, he navigated it pretty well. He looked in terrible shape because, like you said, a lot of times the Flash deck really needs those Sphinx's Revelations to get back into the game, and he was forced to discard all of them very early on. And then when you see Rurik Thar come down, Matt was in a tough spot, but he figured, okay, I have the Azorius Charm in my hand. Now I have the second Restoration in place, so I can double block, potentially dealing with Rurik Thar. I will say take some trample damage, but if I get a little lucky and draw a counter spell, I can counter it back when it comes back down after the Azorius Charm. So he put himself in a position where he still needed to get lucky to win, but he played everything correctly up to that point.
Yeah, and one wonders if Reid could have potentially not sent Rurik Thar into combat the turn that the 2 Restoration Angels were back on defense. Because you have Kessig Wolf Run, you can just send the Beast and not expose Rurik Thar to something like Azorius Charm until Costa's board is in such a place where you don't worry about taking the hit on the way back.
Yeah, it's interesting that Reid didn't just attack with the beast there, because if you just attack with the beast there, you're basically forcing Matt to block potentially with one of the restoration angels, and Reid can just activate the Keswick Wolf Run for maximum. You still get the same results where Matt casts the Azorius Charm, but then he's forced to take 6 from Rurik Thar, and then Rurik Thar is still in play. So yes. I think that maybe at that point in the game, given what Matt's life total was at, you probably just play for Rurik Thar, because really the only out for Matt is Turn and Burn. And he doesn't have that many copies of the deck. Obviously, Reid doesn't know Matt's exact list, but you have to know there's not that many answers to Rurik Thar. You already saw one of the clones get discarded. So I think it's reasonable for Reid to maybe not be as aggressive by attacking there, because obviously you're just giving Matt an increase of the amount of outs that he has to the Rurik Thar in Azorius Charm.
Yeah. Although, again, even if you're in Reid's position, Matt has to not only have Azorius Charm, but then draw a counterspell the following turn, and then draw another spell of significance the turn after. It's not just Azorius Charm or bust.
Oh yeah, Matt still has to get lucky in order to win from that position, but I think if you don't attack with Rurik Thar, you put him in a less of a position where he can actually get lucky. Yeah. It's basically just, if I have the Turn and Burn there, he's still making him take 6.
Yes.
So I still think you probably go for it and just attack with the beast and make sure that your Rurik Thar stays in play. But Reid might have just had a read on Matt.
But Matt, once he had to get rid of all his Sphinx's Revelations to various discard effects, he very correctly shifted into more of a tempo game, because he couldn't possibly win going long any further. And when we had Matt on camera before, you were off that round, but again, it was another matchup where his ability to shift plans.
I apologize. Rurik Thar has to attack each turn. That is correct. So Reid definitely played that game correctly.
Yes.
So we see no turn 2 Farseek for Reid this game, and pretty good news for Matt. Obviously, turn 2 Farseek on the play is pretty devastating for any Junda opponent.
It's going to allow Matt to much more effectively sit on his counter spells. I believe he has a Syncopate and Counterflux in hand.
And here we're going to have a Duress here. And, yep. Syncopate coming. Looks like there's a Syncopate there. A bunch of lands, Counterflux. So he has the permission he needs to stop the later game spells. Does have a Sphinx's Revelation as too. And looks like we're going to take Renounce the Guilds, Counterflux, Sphinx Revelation, Syncopate.
So a lot of this is, if Reid wants to play a relatively fast game, then he's going to value one of the removal spells or counter spells. If he assumes the game is going to go on for a very long time here, he likely takes his Sphinx's Revelation and tries to play around the removal and counter spells that he now knows Costa has access to.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough spot to be in. I think that, if you can get rid of all the counter spells in his hand, you might want to just take one of them. But here, even if you take either Syncopate or Counterflux, he's still going to have one of the counter spells in his hand, and he's going to be left with a Sphinx of Revelation and a Renounce the Guild. So I think you might want to either take the removal spell or the Sphinx of Revelation. I think Sphinx of Revelation is probably the card that you're most afraid of if the game goes long, especially if you didn't go turn 2 Farseek. So he looks like he's taking the Syncopate and leaving Costa with just a Sphinx Counterflux as permission. So Matt draws his card for the turn. Reid currently doesn't have any red mana. He could be slow rolling it. Let's see. Matt just plays the 3rd land for the turn and passes back. Looks like he drew a Think twice. Pretty good draw for Matt there.
Yeah, instead of just sitting on his hands, now he has actually some way to use his mana if Reid's trying to play around counters and slow roll his threats.
So it looks like Reid has a Cavern of Souls, so he's going to be able to resolve at least one of his creature threats. It looks like he has an Olivia in his hand. So if he goes Cavern of Souls on Vampire, he will be able to resolve the Olivia, regardless of the Counterflux. I think Reid's thinking was he has a Rakdos Return and a Garruk Primal Hunter. And if either of those spells resolve, I'm in pretty good shape. So might as well get rid of at least one of the counter spells. And here we go. We see Cavern of Souls naming Vampire, and Olivia Voldera comes down. Matt does have the Think Twice, so we're going to see card draw. It looks like he drew an Oblivion Ring.
Yeah.
He still has the Renounce the Guild, so the Renounce the Guilds will be able to deal with the Olivia if he chooses so.
And we've seen Matt, in previous games really do a good job of using his life total as a resource. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him take a hit here and just use his mana resolving Think Twice in a turn or holding up for counter spells. Just willing to take a hit here.
Yeah, he doesn't want to expose himself to a Thragtusk or a Garruk Primal Hunter, so he's going to take 3 here. Drops down to 17. He has a Sphinx of Revelation to gain life anyway. Liliana comes down here now, so interesting. Does he want to counterflex this, or does he want to just use his Oblivion Ring? A lot of options for Costa here. He can also flashback and Think Twice. I think you're going to let that resolve. I think he's okay with the discard effect here, just because Costa has a lot more card draw than Reid, and he's not under that much pressure that he can't deal with.
Yeah, and he always has the Oblivion Ring as a failsafe in the event that Liliana gets close to an ultimate. But he's probably happy to trade 1-for-1 with cards right now because he has so many cantrips, and he can play the Liliana game pretty effectively right now.
And he actually has Moorland Haunt, which is a pretty good card in this situation because he has an Augur Bolus in his hand. So if Liliana upticks again, he can discard the Augur Bolus, and then he can counter Renounce the Guilds to kill the Olivia, and then make a Spirit token that can start attacking that Liliana and making sure it never gets the ultimate. So let's see from Reid Duke. Reid Duke still currently on no red mana. He has that Cavernous Souls on Vampire, but struggling to get a little red mana here so that he can actually cast either a Rakdos Return or possibly a Huntmaster of the Fells. Looks like we're going to have another uptick of Liliana. He discards an Augur Bolus and a Putrefy on either side. And Matt just untaps and draws for the turn. See Cavernous Souls drawn here. So pretty good situation for Matt here. Obviously he's facing down a Liliana that keeps upticking, but Liliana upticking is actually pretty good for Matt. Just because it keeps chipping away at the cards in Reid's hand, and Matt has cards that he can draw out of it.
Yes.
So Oblivion Ring comes down to deal with the Liliana the Veil, and Matt still has 3 mana up for the counterflux. Here comes Vampire Nighthawk. Matt not afraid of that card.
Uncounterable because of the Cavern still set on Vampire.
So let's see, we have a Cavernous Souls Hollow Fountain. Looks like Cavernous Souls is going to come down, probably Naming Angel, but we'll get a confirmation on that. And it passes the turn back.
And assuming that Reid doesn't do anything that induces Matt's counterspell, I think we're going to probably see the Revelation here for 4 at the end of Reid's turn.
Yeah, so that here we see Garruk Primal Hunter. That will almost certainly invoke a counterflux here from Matt. And there's that counterflux. So Matt has to wait a turn, at least a turn. Oh, there's a Thundermaw Hellkite. Wow. So Matt just takes 2. It looks like he still wants to cast that Sphinx of Revelation though. So
Reid's deck chock full of removal. No reason to just play a Thundermaw out, particularly with Vampire Nighthawk in play. Capable of playing the defensive next turn.
You also don't want to play into duress.
Yeah. Just get your big Revelation off, and that Thundermaw will still be there waiting for you whenever you're ready for it.
Yep. And Reid does have access to red now, so he can cast a big Rakdos Return if he chooses, but there's another Garruk Primal Hunter. Now that Matt drew the Thundermaw Hellkite, he's not nearly as afraid. He can draw 5 cards here, gain 5 life, go up to 14, and that Thundermaw can actually deal with the Garruk pretty efficiently next turn.
Thundermaw Hellkite is actually the primary reason you saw Garruk start to drop in popularity in Standard. It lines up very poorly with that card, and we're about to see that on display.
Yep. So Matt draws his card for the turn. Looks like it's a Restoration Angel. So Sulphur Falls comes down. Looks like we're probably going to see a Thundermaw Hellkite come into play here. He has 4 mana left. Yep, here comes Thundermaw. The effect doesn't really matter in this situation. And Garruk Primal Hunter dies to the Thundermaw Hellkite. Looks like we also have a War Leader's Helix in Matt Costa's hand, so he has a way to potentially deal with that Vampire Nighthawk if he chooses to, so that Reid won't be able to hold it back for a blocker.
And Restoration Angel to protect his Thundermaw Hellkite from removal. Costa's getting really well set up here. He can afford to take this hit. I think that he's probably just likely to just untap here, in fact.
Even a Rakdos Return for 4 is... Oh, so here's a Rakdos Return. It's going to be for 5, so It will. It looks like it might empty Matt's grip here. Do we want to cast a Helix here? I think you might want to heal. Do you want a Helix or Restoration Angel
I believe
here?
with Reid at 26, I believe you have to Helix here. I think if it was lower, there would be an argument for just Restoration Angel and starting to race, but the game's going to be going on for a while longer, and the 4 life is really relevant here now that you're getting return for so much.
Yeah, so Reid empties his hand here, but Reid's hand is also empty, and he's left with just 7 lands and a Beast token, whereas Costa has a Thunderbolt Hellkite in play, 8 lands, or 9 lands, a Moorland Haunt, and a Think Twice in his graveyard. So Matt's in pretty good shape right here. He's going to flashback to Think Twice, draw a card prior to the attack. Wow, he draws Augur Bolus and Turn Burn for the turn.
Two huge draws.
2 really good draws there. Allows him to deal with a potential Thragtusk if one is drawn. Let's see if Augur Bolus hits anything sweet like a counterspell. And looks like, Sphinx's Revelation, another sweet card to hit. So looks like Thunderbolt Hellkite's going to come over, drop Reid down to 21. Reid in a really tough spot right here. He's got no cards in his hand. He doesn't even have a Kessig Wolfrun in play to really make his beast even more threatening.
He really needs to find Duress or another Rakdos Returns, or big draws that he needs to find.
Let's see, the beast comes over, Augur Bolus just chumps. And we're going to see now a Huntmaster Fells. So Huntmaster Fells give Reid a little more life there and some more attackers. Matt Costa just activates his Moorland Haunt, makes a 1/1 Spirit token, removing an Augur Bolus. And we're going to untap here, see if we have yet another good draw from Matt. Looks like it's a Azorius Charm, so another way to deal with potential attackers from Reid's side of the board. Actually, really good draw there, because if Reid draws a Kessig Wolfrun, he's likely to go all in with it, so the Azorius Charm's a great answer to that.
Yeah, Costa can now rev for slightly less at this turn if he wants to prevent the Huntmaster from flipping and still leave 2 mana up to have Azorius Charm as an answer.
Yeah, so he can either Revelations on his main phase to keep the Huntmaster from flipping, or he can just cantrip the Azorius Charm if he chooses.
You can also cast Burn on the Huntmaster and then say go.
I like cantripping here because it still leaves you open for a big Sphinx Revelation next turn. And there's a clone, wow. So pretty good draw there for Matt. He can attack with just a Thundermaw. Looks like he's just going to attack with a Thundermaw. Chooses not to play the clone this turn. And let's see if Reid draws. Doesn't look like he drew a Bonfire for the turn. Bonfire would be another pretty good rip for Reid.
Yeah, Reid has still a lot of big X spells in his deck that could swing this game around.
Reid could potentially just try to pass the turn here and flip his Huntmaster of the Fells, although, you know, it's very difficult to do that against a blue, red, white flash deck.
Yeah, he's also aware that Revelation is a card in Costa's hand. So.
Yeah. So Reid in a tough spot here. Let's see. Not sure what he drew for the turn. Kessig Wolfrun is an okay draw, but again, Matt has plenty of answers to that. Bonfire would have been huge, but it doesn't look like he has that. Rakdos Return. Rakdos Return is probably one of the better cards he can draw. In all honesty, though, his best bet of trying to win this game is probably trying to burn out Matt with a runner X spell.
Yep.
But Matt does have a Revelation, so he's going to be able to gain another 4 life. So let's see. Costa attacks now with all. Reid attacks with both the Huntmaster of the Fells, the Wolf token, and the Beast token. Matt has several options here. He has the Turn and Burn, but he also has a Sphinx of Revelation, so maybe he might just chump block here and cast a large Sphinx, or it looks like he might want to just Turn and Burn here. So
yeah, it's just taking a pretty conservative route here.
So yeah, so Huntmaster falls to the Burn side, and the Beast becomes an 0/1, falling to the Spirit token, and Matt takes 2, dropping to 6. And Reid just has a land for the turn. And I think Matt, knowing that Reid doesn't have enough lands to actually cast a Rakdos Return for 6, he was comfortable dropping to 6 for that turn. He still has that Sphinx of Revelation, so he can still gain a lot of life. Now he drew another Turn and Burn. So it looks like Reid's just going to take 5 from the Thundermaw Hellkite. Matt's going to leave back that Spirit token to chump block the Wolf next turn. And if he has to use a burn because of Kessig Wolfrun, he has that too. We're just going to see a chump block here. And there's a land, and then we're going to see a large Sphinx Revelation.
And this is going to push Costa.
Oh, no. So it looks like we're going to see a Moreland Haunt.
Oh, he can clone his Thundermaw and burn Reid for. Yeah, exactly.
So there it is. Reid Duke falls down to Matt Costa, who moves on to 12-0. Who would write Flash versus Jund? Generally, you kind of figure the Flash player isn't that much favored in this matchup, but you know, Matt played the second game pretty flawlessly to put himself in a position to win. And in game 3, Reid just didn't get the Farseek on turn 2, and his slow was his start was a little too slow to deal with the good cards that Matt was drawing on, like in the mid-range game.
Yeah, I mean the second game was really the most impressive display from Costa, in my opinion. He was, you know, again, once all of his Sphinx Revelations are gone that game, he can't possibly win a long game.